Shavua Tov. This is Motzei Shabbat, Parashat Beresheet, the 5776. We begin reading the Torah today. The past couple of weeks have been weeks of great turmoil and pain and suffering for the Jewish people. And the question that each of us asks ourselves, what can we do? And each person has to ask that question for himself and herself. One of the things that we can do, and one of the things that everyone can do, especially one who's at a distance, is pray and to improve the way we live our lives. And I think that this week's Parsha really highlights that. Every Friday night, we say the Kiddush, and we end off the first paragraph of Kiddush, Asher bara Elokim la'asot. That God created la'asot, to do. What does this mean? God created to do. So the implication here is that God created in order that something be done after the creation. And Rab Chaim of Volozhin, in his seminal work, the Nefesh HaChaim, says that God created the world in order to be put into the hands, into the charge, the responsibility of the human being. And that it would become man's job to build the world or to destroy the world. And that everything that would happen in the world of creation would be dependent upon the actions, the speech, and the thought of the human being. And that is what it means, Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God created in order that man will do and will control the world. And if you look carefully in the verses, it also says that God, specifically, v'yirdu, God says that the human being will rule over the world. And there are many different ways in which the human being can rule over the world. But the way in which Reb Chaim of Volozhin is emphasizing here is that man rules over the world based upon his actions, but not about literally with his hands manipulating the world, but by virtue of the goodness or the evil of a person's deeds, he changes the world. He controls whether God's blessing enters into the world or whether he withholds it and the world is lacking and the world suffers. Along these lines, the Gemara in Masechet Brachot says, Kol ha'olam kulo nizonim bizchutan shel hatzadikim, vehem afilu bizchut atzman einan nizonim. The whole world lives and eats by the merit of the righteous, even if they themselves may be lacking. And similarly, elsewhere in the Gemara Tainis, Kol ha'olam kulo nizonim b'shvil chanina b'ni, v'chanina b'ni dai lo b'kav charuvi me'erev Shabbat le'erev Shabbat. God said the whole world eats because from the merit of Rabbi Chanina, my son. And for him, he should be like the multi-billionaire who's got all the money in the world, so to speak. But Chanina, he only needs a little container of carob, then that's all he eats for the week, from one Shabbos to the next. But behind what's being said here is that what the human being does influences the world. And it's possible It's possible that the whole world doesn't deserve what it gets. I mean, really, when you think about it, who can say that the life that I'm living, I really deserve this? I mean, we live in houses that are more palatial than probably the palace of King David himself. Do we really deserve that? Do we deserve all of the things that we have? Are we more worthy than all of our ancestors who lived in great poverty and suffering? I don't think that we can answer yes to such a question. We are benefiting from the merits of others. And we don't know who that is. The whole world may be benefiting from one hidden righteous person, and nobody knows about it except God. Maybe even that righteous person doesn't know about it. But the point is, coming back to Rav Chaim Volozhin, that as my father-in-law should be well says, what you do affects others. We must know that what we do in this world controls not just affects people psychologically, but you can, with a single person can affect the benefit of the entire world. So then the Rambam says, and he codifies this from the Talmud in Kiddushin, that a person should see not only himself but the whole world in a perfect balance. And the next thing that I do can tip the world entirely one way or the other. This is a spiritual reality that we need to realize really exists. And what we do can affect the whole world. In this week's Parsha, you see, Adam and Eve are given the whole world. They can eat everything that they want. God says, there's this one tree. I don't want you to eat the fruit from that tree until Shabbos. Our sages tell us that God was going to give them the fruit to have on Shabbos. They only had to wait 6 hours. That was it. And then they would have had it. Right? Most people don't know that. Yeah. Then they would have had it. They didn't wait 6 hours. So it's a little bit of impatience of 6 hours. Meanwhile, because of that little bit of impatience that they had, they affected the entire creation down till today. To leave the Garden of Eden, otherwise we'd all still be there. So the single act, even one of impatience, even a single word, might change the course of history. Look what happened with how when Laban exchanged Rachel for Leah, changed the entire course of history, and engendered the enmity eventually between Joseph and his brothers, who was sold into slavery, and everything that came about because of that. The sin of the golden calf was also impatience of 6 hours when they didn't wait for Moses. 6 hours. What did the sin of the golden calf cause for all generations to come? The sin of the spies. No, we don't want to go to the land of Israel. 40 years in the desert, and all of the problems that we've had in history can be traced back to that moment. So, when given a decision to do what the right thing, or to choose the wrong, God forbid, to choose what God wants for us, or to choose what I decide I want just for myself, that might be a major moment in the history of the entire world. The person doesn't know. Therefore, at every moment, the person has to see this perfect balance. And what will happen with what I do or say or even think next? Because the power of thought is also very great, maybe greater than action and words. That's for another discussion. So this is all wrapped up in this week's Parsha. Asher bara Elokim lasot. God gave it to us, this world to do. And so, particularly within the context of this time that we see it and find ourselves, we have the opportunity to think about what Shimon HaTzadik said, Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed, al Torah ve'al avodah ve'al gimilut chasadim. The world stands on three things. The world exists by virtue of three things. Torah, in other words, studying the will of God, avodah, performing the will of God, and gemilut chasadim, being kind and compassionate to our fellow human beings. And so we have the opportunity to have an impact for the benefit of ourselves, our whole Jewish people, and even the whole world. And we have to see that everything that a person does strengthens or weakens the force field around the Jewish people and the world. There is an iron dome, but the real iron dome is that force field that God gives us the power to create. And if a person does a mitzvah, a person studies Torah, a person seeks the will of God, a person seeks to do what God wants, a person helps another person, a person smiles at another person, does something, it can strengthen that iron dome. God forbid, a person can pierce and weaken the protection of the Jewish people by neglecting to do a good thing, or God forbid, even doing something they shouldn't do. So, as we begin the Torah with this very fundamental idea that the Torah gives us, Asher bara Elokim lasot, God gave man the power to affect the influx of God's blessing into the world. God gave man the power to affect the destiny of the entire world. And we should, and he's presenting us with this great challenge now, a very, indeed, frightening time, but as Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzama'od ha'ikar lo lefachid klal. If we understand that this is the reason that God created us, and that we have to walk this narrow bridge, and not to be afraid because we are holding God's hand as we cross, and he's showing us the way to go, and he's telling us that go with me and I will protect you. God will bless us, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll see the complete flow of God's blessing into the world and see the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Hamavdil ben kodesh lecha.